I'm working on a video. It'll probably be out tomorrow, hence why there hasn't been a My GM in a couple days. So we got one more NBA talk here. This one we're going to be talking about who are potentially some of the next big name NBA players to get traded. I've made videos like this in the past. Might as well do it again for this upcoming season. And we'll just start in the Eastern Conference. The first name who could potentially be moved, maybe Paul Millsap of the Atlanta Hawks. Millsap, 32 at this point. One of the 15 or 20 best players in the NBA last season for his defense, his ability to move around the floor, his athleticism at the power forward position. He can hit a 15-footer. I wouldn't want him to make a living shooting three-pointers, but if you leave him wide open from there, there's a decent chance that it's going to go in. And he's overall a very good player, but Atlanta is in a weird state of transition right now where Schroeder's the new point guard and Dwight Howard's your new center. There is a chance that Atlanta could be set up for another year of like 45 to 48 wins or whatever. And given that Millsap's 32 at this point, and he also has a player option for next season, Atlanta could be in a position of, we could trade this guy for a couple of assets instead of just losing him for nothing. And then another team who would probably have to be at least a decent one given that he has the player option. You could bring him into your system for a whole year and hopefully put out a winning product to where he would accept the player option, and then he would re-sign with you for the last couple of seasons of his career. I think that's a situation that could happen with Millsap. But at the same time, Atlanta is really stressing consistency nowadays, so maybe they're fine with just keeping him until his contract runs out. Now, the next team I'm looking at is the Chicago Bulls, because with signing Rajon Rondo and Dwayne Wade to play with Jimmy Butler, there is, of course, the question if those three can really play together. And I mean, I've talked about them a little bit. I think there's potential for it to work out. These are three smart players, and with Wade and Butler, they're pretty damn good at playing off-ball. But if you don't have a lot of natural shooters on your team, it can be a risk. So if it's really not working out, I could see a world where Chicago looks to move either Rajon Rondo or Dwayne Wade. I highly doubt they would trade Jimmy Butler, given he's, in his mid-20s and he's the best player on the team, but I could see a world where Dwayne Wade gets moved for something. I imagine a championship caliber team would look to trade for Wade. I don't know what the pieces would be, but I think that's a possibility if it's not working out with Chicago. And another interesting team in the East is the Orlando Magic, who did a bunch of stuff this offseason. They acquired Serge Ibaka and Bismack Biyombo when they already have Nikola Vucevic. There's a chance Vucevic could be moved because, Vucevic, he's a low-post scorer and he's a very good mid-range shooter, but questions about his defense and his ability to move around the floor, athleticism. Bismack Biyombo is very athletic, a natural defensive player who can hopefully bump up his rebounding for them. He doesn't have much of an offensive game, but given Biyombo and Serge Ibaka and Aaron Gordon, who's still on the roster, the Magic might be looking to just become a super athletic team, and if that's what they want to do, Vucevic could be out. And given that Elfrid Payton hasn't really taken off in the NBA yet, and I think part of that is due to their lack of shooting over the past couple seasons, now that they have Evan Fournier and Mario Hezonja ready to start, they're going to be hitting a lot of three-pointers, so I think that'll help out Elfrid Payton. But there's a chance that they've just decided, Payton's not the guy for us. You could trade Vucevic for a point guard if a team is willing to take on a low-post scorer who's not very athletic. I don't know, the Magic are making a lot of moves. Hopefully they finally commit to something for that team. Also the Milwaukee Bucks, Greg Monroe, there's been trade rumors with him. I've already said that I don't think Greg Monroe is the right center for that Bucks team. That team needs to be running up and down the floor and having Giannis drive into the paint, and I don't think Greg Monroe really fits into that. So I think you could move Monroe for maybe just another center or perhaps a power forward who fits more into the mold of what you're going for. Now if we head over to the Western Conference, let me just say, the Russell Westbrook contract, it's not exactly 5 years with no options. It's 2 years and a player option, so hopefully this year goes well for OKC. Because if it doesn't, if the Thunder maybe struggle to make the playoffs or whatever. I mean, I think they're going to be really good still. But if they have a tough year, Westbrook will be looking at basically 1 year left with a player option, so he could just choose to leave. So in 1 year's time, the Westbrook trade discussion could revisit itself. I think we should remember that. Also in the West, the Sacramento Kings. Some talk about them wanting to trade away Rudy Gay. I've already said I'm not a big fan of Rudy Gay. He's a ball stopper. He averages like less than 2 assists per game. He's okay on defense. There was like minute for a second about Blake Griffin going to Boston and Avery Bradley and Rudy Gay ending up on the Clippers. I would not do that move if I was the Clippers. I wouldn't trade for Rudy Gay, period, if I was any NBA GM. But if they try hard enough, I'm sure somebody will take him. I would much rather have someone who can play defense and hit an open three-pointer at that spot than Rudy Gay. There is, of course, also the ever-going will DeMarcus Cousins finally demand a trade story. If it happens this year, then, well, he could get moved. I have to imagine it's going to happen eventually, unless he just really is committed to Sacramento, which he does seem to be, but at a certain point, you got to imagine Boogie's just going to be like, all right, I've had enough of this. But as of right now, he's still there. And then probably the last one that I notice in the West is the Phoenix Suns, who, with the emergence of Devin Booker, he has to be your starting two-guard because he's going to score over 20 points a game for the majority of his NBA career. Probably make a couple of all-star teams too, so who are you going to trade? You moving Eric Bledsoe or you moving Brandon Knight? Now, personally, I think Eric Bledsoe is a better player than Knight. I think he's a better point guard. He's better at getting inside. He's better defensively because he's a pretty damn strong point guard. But Bledsoe has had some injury troubles in his career. But then again, Brandon Knight hasn't exactly been perfectly healthy throughout his entire NBA life either. Whichever one they decide to move, I think you can definitely find a suitor. Knight seems like a guy who can hit three-pointers and score 15-plus points, and Eric Bledsoe is a starting point guard, so they'll pick one, they'll move him, they'll get Devin Booker starting there permanently, and of course with trading one of those guys, they can help themselves out somewhere else on the roster, and Phoenix can get themselves going in the right direction. I think that's it.